How has football changed over the last 40 years? 40 years is a long time, so you'd expect a lot to change, but the changes might be a bit different than what you would think they'd be. Hi everyone, I'm Ghost Masala and welcome back to a video where I take a look at the changes in football over the past 20 years and what's different, the problems, what's the best players, everything like that. And the source for this video will be this book here, a book written back in 1979, which is of course 40 years ago. And as you can see, it's a little bit damaged because I've read this book quite a few times when I was younger. And although a lot has changed since that time, some things will always stay the same. This book was written by Martin Tyler 32 years before Aguero scored his league-winning goal. So yeah, I'll be taking some sort of quotes from this book and seeing what they say, and just a general sort of view, because I think it can be pretty tricky to find old stuff and sort of knowledge about old stuff on the internet. So it gives a good view of the opinions and what people thought back then. So firstly, who was the best player 40 years ago? Well, Pelé was done by 1979, he was 39 by then, and Maradona was only 19, so the two real great players of football in general sort of were playing. So it's difficult to choose who was like the best player. It was sort of like a transition period, because I'll talk about someone else who was sort of getting old as well. So this book sort of puts a English player called Kevin Keegan very high up, and he did win 2 European Player of the Year awards playing for Liverpool and then for Hamburg later on. But some other players were also very good as well. You have the Argentinian Mario Kempes, top scorer at the 1978 World Cup. Argentina won that. Dino Zoff, oldest goalkeeper to win the World Cup, I think, for Italy, good goalkeeper. And aging Johan Cruyff, who didn't play for the Netherlands national team anymore, but all those three may have been better than Kevin Keegan or other English players at the time, and or the Scottish player Kenny Dalglish. Overall though, the talent of this time wasn't as good as today, sort of the Ronaldo and Messi. They weren't sort of like outstanding stars. Speaking of English players though, England hadn't qualified for the past 2 World Cups in 1974 and 1978. That was a really, really bad spell for English football. And they did badly in the European Championships as well, although the Euros weren't the same thing that they are nowadays. They had about 4 teams in them back then, and we've had a history of doing really badly in the Euros, which has continued recently. And the Premier League wasn't called the Premier League yet. It was known as Division 1, and it was known as that up until 1992, when Sky came along and changed everything. And the last trophy in this book was won by Forest in 1978, and then they would win the European Cup the next season, and then the season after that they would win it again. And Liverpool won the 2 league titles before that, and they also won the European Cup before Forest won it. The Champions League was known as the European Cup back then, before it got rebranded and turned into a group stage sort of tournament, so it was just knockout teams. So you had 2 legs and then that was it, no group stages. English teams were dominating in Europe, and of course we're starting to see that sort of come back today, and it also happened in sort of the 1990s as well. And yeah, let's take a look at some football opinions back in 1979, because I think that's quite interesting. You know, anyone can read data from a website, but it's interesting to see what people thought football's problems were in 1979, what people thought would happen in the future, and stuff like that. Television is bad for the game. Match of the Day had just come in recently at this time, and with its highlights, people were worried that a 90-minute match would be too boring for young children and for general audiences, sort of casual football fans. And it seemed like a good point at the time, and I can see where they're coming from, but it didn't turn out to be a big problem, because of course going to a football match is a very different experience to sitting on the TV and watching some highlights. It's way different, and if you've never gone to a proper football match before, I would recommend it, because it is a completely different experience to just sitting at home on TV and watching highlights. Even if you live somewhere where there's like no good football teams, just go and watch a local team or something like that, because it is really different. So yeah, violence is a serious threat to football. And so football games weren't really safe places to go. Of course, nowadays you have loads of stewards around, and you've got family sections in certain stadiums as well, so it's safer for young people. And even in like the other sections, you're not going to really get attacked. When people do get attacked, it's a rarity. And and also because grounds were standing, it meant that people could get into massive fights, like massive brawls between rival fans. If a selection of rival fans got into the other side, you could have a massive fight, and it could end up sort of affecting other non-fighting fans who were in the stands. And they eventually abolished standing, and football games began to be more policed as well, and then they became safer. And although this wouldn't be for about a decade or two, and they did end up with a massive football disaster in 1985, where Liverpool fans tried to break down a wall at a Juventus game or something like that in in the European Cup final, and it caused a lot of Juventus fans to die. And then England got banned for a long time. They got banned for 5 years from European football, and a lot of people maybe are saying that maybe you should get a similar ban for racism, because of course this 5-year ban from European football for all English teams did end up working, and football games are now safe to go to. So yeah, this was a fair problem to have, of course, in 1979, and it did turn out to be a pretty big problem. American soccer is on the rise. Okay, so this book says that the American League at the time used to be a joke for retiring players, but now Pele's gone there. It's not. It's much better. It could maybe even be way better than European football. And of course, does this sound familiar at all? I mean, it sounds similar to what's happening today. You know, we've got Zlatan going to the MLS, LA Galaxy, and Atlanta United, and MLS seems to be getting better, but this has happened before. MLS has got better, well, not MLS, but the league before got better before, and it ended up collapsing. So it did collapse. So the situation is not completely hopeless in America. We've just got to hope that the MLS doesn't collapse this time. I would trade a league title for the FA Cup. That was a quote from a player back in the 1970s, and recently the FA Cup's value has gone down a bit, but you don't have to go too far back to find some great FA Cup finals, including Drogba and that Gerrard goal that he scored. It's known as the Gerrard final or whatever. That's not too far away, but the league is of course much more prestigious now, because you get a lot more money. It's much more. It's kind of seen as much more difficult to win the league. But you know, when a club wins an FA Cup and they don't get a lot of trophies, I remember Man City won the FA Cup, and that was, for me, was much better than winning the league, because I wasn't really, because of course if you don't have Sky, you can't watch league games, so I was able to watch the FA Cup and sort of see how they won it, and it was really good at the time. Nowadays big teams seem to win it every year, and it's just a bit boring. Seems like a bit of a rotation sort of competition. But yeah, I still think the FA Cup's pretty good, but you're not going to trade a league title for the FA Cup like you did back in the old days. The League Cup is a joke. Yeah, not much has changed here. Back then, however, many top clubs didn't even enter the League Cup, and I'm guessing everyone enters the League Cup now. I'm guessing they might be forced to be honest. But yeah, like Liverpool, some seasons didn't even enter the League Cup. They got a bit better, and now people are talking about getting rid of it again. And to be honest, I don't think many people would be too disappointed to see it go. It's never been a massive tradition, so yeah. And speaking of things that have changed in football, let's go for a massive list. Goal average, which was a really stupid system, was changed to goal difference, which is a much better system that is you can actually understand how it works. It's 3 points for a win instead of 2, because people were going for draws instead of trying to win. Re-election was scrapped, and don't ask me what that is, it's really complicated. VAR, goal line technology, no back pass rule, golden goal, etc. More changes like that, and also rest in peace the Cup Winners' Cup. Legendary cup that everyone cared about it, totally not just a dead trophy that wasted everyone's time. And and also Asia and Africa are better at football now, and there are actually lots of different players in different leagues. English league has loads of foreign players in it now, which I think is great. And other stuff like that, and the money's gone crazy in football. So back then players were still paid a lot, and so a player moved for £1 million and it was seen as a big thing. But now it's just they're getting paid 50 million a year or something. It might be a little bit too much, I'm not sure, maybe a tiny bit too much, but maybe it was sort of the perfect balance back then. And yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. Really hope you've enjoyed this video. I've really enjoyed making it from a book that I used to read a lot when I was younger, and which I thought was really interesting. So yeah, and hopefully you found this video interesting. And yeah, I've seen the channel has gained a lot of new subscribers recently, so this might be your first video of mine you're seeing before you subscribe, because I don't upload very often, but I'm trying to upload a bit more. So yeah, thanks for subscribing, and if you want to suggest another video idea, make sure to leave it in the comments. I always like doing suggestions, and if it's good I'll probably do it, although recently I haven't been doing people's suggestions, which has been a bit bad, but if it is good I will do it, I promise. And I'm getting round to some Road To Hokkaido suggestions in the future once some challenges comes along. But yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. I really hope you've enjoyed this, and yeah, I'll see you next time.